The sun burned white-hot over the little town of Dry Creek, its heat pressing down like a hammer on iron. Dust rolled across the main street, curling around boots and wagon wheels. Every window shutter stood half open, faces peeking from behind. Folks whispered. Children pointed, wide-eyed. Men spat tobacco juice into the dirt, shaking their heads. Women clutched their aprons tighter, as if holding themselves against something foul. At the center of it all, stumbling on swollen feet, was a girl in shackles. Her wrists were raw, red, bruised deep by the iron cuffs that clinked with every staggering step. A thick chain dragged between her ankles, forcing her gait into a shuffle. Her long black hair, once oiled and shining, hung in tangled ropes over her shoulders. Dust clung to her skin, her clothes were torn rags, and her lips cracked from thirst. Yet her eyes, dark, steady, unblinking, did not lower to the jeering crowd. She was Apache. And in this town, that meant she was less than nothing. "Look at her," a man drawled from the boardwalk. His grin showed yellow teeth. "Ain't worth a damn. Ain't no rancher'll take her. Ain't no house'll keep her. She's cursed," another whispered, making the sign of the cross. "Heard she bit clean through a man's hand. Ain't natural." The sheriff strutted beside her, big belly bouncing against his badge, his pistol glinting at his hip. He yanked the girl's chain hard enough to make her stumble. "Keep your eyes on the dirt, savage," he barked. "Ain't nobody here needs your stare." But she did not look down. Her name was Nayeli. And though her body trembled, her spirit refused to bend. The desert wind carried her memory back, the way heat carries a mirage. She had been a child when the soldiers came. She still remembered the crack of rifles, the smoke rising against the blue sky, the screams of her people. Her mother's lullaby had been the last sound she heard before being torn away, soft as wind and grass, cut short by fire and steel. Years blurred. She was traded like a coin. Sold from one rough hand to another. Bruises healed only to be replaced. Laughter of her captors clung to her like a stench. Somewhere along the line, she stopped crying. Stopped pleading. She learned to watch in silence, teeth clenched, biding time. Yet that silence did not break her. It hardened her. The fire in her chest smoldered still. And now, here she was, on display. They dragged her onto the platform outside the sheriff's office, a crude stage where cattle were sometimes weighed and sold. Today, the cattle was her. "All right, folks," Sheriff Kane called out, raising his hands. Sweat shined on his forehead, and his grin was slick with cruelty. "Got ourselves a fine prize here. Straight Apache. Strong back. Don't speak much, so she won't sass ya. Who'll take her off my hands?" The crowd murmured. Heads shook. No hands lifted. "She's trouble," one farmer muttered. "Not worth feed in," another spat. "Ain't even pretty. Look at that face. Ugly as sin." Laughter rippled through the onlookers, cruel and hollow. Nayeli felt every word cut into her flesh, but she stood unmoving. Sheriff Kane scowled. "Come on now, folks. Someone put up a coin. Even a nickel. She'll work the fields, haul water, do what's told. Hell, if nothing else, she'll scare coyotes off your land." Still, silence. "No one," the sheriff barked. "Not a soul." A boy in the crowd piped up with a laugh, "Ain't nobody wants her, Sheriff. She's worth less than the chains on her." The sheriff's face darkened. He spat on the boards, glaring at the girl as though her lack of value was her fault. "Damned if you ain't the most useless thing I ever dragged into this town." The sound of hooves cracked the silence. From the far end of the street, riders appeared, dark silhouettes against the blazing sky. Dust rose in their wake, and the rhythm of horses echoed like thunder rolling into town. Hats low, pistols gleaming, laughter riding on the wind. Every face on the street stiffened. Mothers snatched children inside. Storekeepers ducked behind their counters. The outlaws had come. And at their head rode Jace Holloway. His name was whispered across territories, carried on wanted posters nailed to every post. Some called him a devil in boots. Others swore he was half-wolf, born for blood. But all agreed, he was a man who feared nothing, bowed to no law, and lived with a grin sharper than any blade. He reined in his stallion at the sight of the stage. Smoke-gray eyes narrowed on the girl in shackles. "Well, well," he drawled, his voice cutting across the murmurs. "What's this circus?" Sheriff Kane puffed his chest, trying to stand taller. "Nothin' for you, Holloway. Just sellin' off this savage. Ain't much use, truth told. Not even worth her supper." Jace swung down from his horse, boots hitting the ground with a thud. He sauntered forward, spurs jingling, dust rising around his long coat. The town seemed to hold its breath as he climbed the platform. He looked at Nayeli. Not her chains, not her rags, not the dirt on her skin. He looked into her eyes. And something flickered there, recognition. Sheriff Kane chuckled nervously. "Don't tell me you're thinkin' of talkin' her, Holloway. She's a curse. Nothin' but trouble. Mark my word, not even the devil himself would want her." The crowd chuckled at the sheriff's joke, relief bubbling through their fear of Holloway. But Jace didn't laugh. He tilted his head, smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Good thing," he said slowly, his voice low, dangerous, carrying like the whisper of a rattlesnake, "I ain't the devil." His hand dropped to the revolver at his hip. He cocked the hammer with a metallic click that sliced through the air. The grin widened. His smoke-gray eyes never left the sheriff's. "But I'll take her." The crowd gasped. A beat of silence. Then the sharp wind carried the promise of violence, and the town of Dry Creek braced itself for the storm that was about to break. The silence after Jace's words was the kind that presses against the ears, heavy, waiting to shatter. Sheriff Kane's grin faltered. The crowd's nervous chuckles died in their throats. All eyes fixed on the outlaw chief who had just claimed what no man in town dared touch. "You ain't serious, Holloway," the sheriff scoffed, but his voice cracked at the edges. "This girl ain't worth a bullet. Not even worth." Jace's revolver cleared its holster with a hiss of steel. The barrel pointed square at the sheriff's chest. "I reckon," Jace said, smoke-gray eyes narrowing, "I'll decide what she's worth." The hammer clicked back. Chaos broke like a thunderclap. The sheriff lunged for his pistol. Too slow. Jace fired first. The gun roared like thunder, echoing off the wooden storefronts. Sheriff Kane staggered backward, clutching his shoulder, cursing through clenched teeth. The deputies scrambled, boots pounding on the boards, rifles raised. The outlaws drew in unison, irons singing through the hot air. Bullets screamed. Glass shattered. Women shrieked. Horses reared, eyes rolling wild with fear. Nayeli dropped flat on the platform, chains clattering against the wood. The world blurred into dust and smoke and the choking tang of gunpowder. Jace cut down a deputy who'd aimed for the girl, his bullet finding its mark between the man's eyes. "Stay down," he barked at Nayeli without looking at her, already firing again. But she didn't stay down. When a deputy leapt onto the stage, shotgun raised, Nayeli surged forward, iron chain swinging. The shackle smashed into the man's knee. Bone cracked. He howled, collapsing, and she grabbed the dropped shotgun by instinct. Her arms trembled under its weight, but her eyes burned with fire. For a heartbeat, the outlaw chief glanced at her, surprise sparking in his grin. "Well, hell. Ain't she got teeth?" The gunfight raged. Dust, blood, and smoke churned together until the air itself seemed aflame. By the time the last deputy fell, Dry Creek's main street was littered with groaning men, shattered glass, and the acrid reek of death. Jace strode back to the stage, boots crunching over bullet casings. He holstered his smoking revolver and drew a knife from his belt. Nayeli's chest heaved as she stood over the broken body of the man she'd struck, the chain dripping blood. Her knuckles were white on the shotgun. Her eyes flicked from Jace's knife to his smirk. "Hold still," he said, voice low but not unkind. The blade bit into the iron links. One strike. Two. Sparks flew as steel met steel. With a final crack, the shackles around her wrists fell to the ground. The weight she'd carried for years crashed onto the platform with a metallic thud. For the first time, her hands were free. She staggered back, clutching them to her chest, staring down at the iron like it was the corpse of some enemy finally slain. Her breath came ragged, her throat tight. "Easy," Jace murmured. "They're just chains. Nothing more." Nayeli's dark eyes snapped up to his. "They were my life. Not anymore." The outlaws wasted no time. "Chief," one of them barked, "Posse'll be on our tails in 10 minutes. We got a ride." Jace nodded. He glanced at Nayeli, still gripping the shotgun like it was her lifeline. "You ridin' with me, girl?" Her lips parted, disbelief flickering across her face. "Why?" "'Cause you ain't got nowhere else. And I ain't in the habit of leavin' behind folk I save." His grin flashed sharp. "Besides, you swing chains better than most men swing a fist." He swung onto his stallion and reached down. For a long moment, she stared at his outstretched hand. She hated him already, for his arrogance, his smirk, the way he spoke like he owned the desert. But more than that, she hated that he might be right. Her choices were chains on the ground or his hand. She took it. They rode hard, hooves drumming across the sun-baked earth, a storm of dust trailing behind. Dry Creek shrank into the horizon, the cries of townsfolk fading until there was only wind and silence. By nightfall, they made camp in a hollow of red rock. The fire crackled low, throwing sparks into the star-flecked sky. Coyotes howled in the distance, the sound carrying thin and lonely. Nayeli sat apart, shotgun across her lap, her eyes unblinking on Jace and his men. She had not spoken a word since they'd left town. Jace chewed on a strip of jerky, watching her from the corner of his eye. Finally, he broke the silence. "You bite harder than my horse, girl," he said with a chuckle. "Never seen someone swing chains like that. Remind me not to hand you a real weapon." One of the outlaws laughed. Another muttered, "She's wild. Shoulda left her in Dry Creek." Nayeli's head snapped toward the man. Her stare was sharp enough to cut. The outlaw shifted uncomfortably under it. Jace smirked. "Told you." Teeth. She finally spoke, her voice rough, low, but steady. "Why free me? To use me? To sell me again?" The laughter around the fire died. Jace leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes catching the firelight. "Because," he said slowly, "I saw myself in your eyes. Chains that don't fit no soul." Nayeli's throat tightened. She wanted to curse him, to spit in his face, but the words caught. He wasn't lying. And that scared her more than any chain ever had. The fire burned low. The men drifted into uneasy sleep, one by one. Nayeli sat awake, listening to the desert breathe. The shotgun rested against her shoulder, her finger ghosting the trigger. For the first time in years, she wasn't chained. And yet, freedom felt fragile, breakable. Then, crack. The sharp snap of a twig. Her head jerked up. From the shadows beyond the firelight came the glint of rifles, the gleam of eyes, the whisper of boots on sand. "Up," she hissed, but too late. Gunfire exploded. Muzzles flashed in the dark. Bullets tore into the camp. Outlaws scrambled for their guns. Horses screamed, rearing against the stakes. Jace rolled to his feet, revolver in hand, a curse ripping from his throat. Damn bounty hunters. Nayeli fired the shotgun. The blast lit the night, the recoil nearly knocking her backward. A man screamed and fell. Her heart thundered in her chest, but her aim did not falter. "Stay behind me!" Jace shouted. She snarled back, "I've been behind men long enough." The desert night howled with gunfire. The battle had found them again. Gunfire ripped the night apart. Sparks burst from rifle barrels hidden in the rocks, turning the desert into a battlefield of shadows and flame. The outlaws cursed, scrambling to return fire, their boots crunching in the sand. Horses screamed, thrashing against their tethers, eyes rolling white. Nayeli's ears rang. She dropped low, shotgun braced tight against her shoulder. Her breath came ragged, but her eyes burned steady. She pulled the trigger, boom. The blast lit the canyon hollow. A bounty hunter toppled from his perch, crashing into the dust. Beside her, Jace fired quick, sharp shots, his revolver barking like thunder. He moved like a man born to chaos, every bullet finding a mark. But when a shadow leapt from the rocks above, knife raised, Jace wasn't fast enough. Nayeli was. She swung her iron chain, still looped around her waist like a trophy, and cracked it across the attacker's skull. The man dropped, blood streaming down his temple. Jace glanced at her through the smoke, grin flashing even as he reloaded. "Hell, girl, you fight like the devil's daughter." The fight raged. Bullets screamed. Dust choked the air. Men fell, some clutching wounds, others never rising again. Nayeli ducked, reloaded the shotgun with trembling fingers, and fired again. She didn't think. Didn't pause. For once in her life, the fear didn't freeze her, it pushed her forward. But then she saw it. A rifle barrel leveled at Jace from the rocks. Too far for her to reach. Too quick. She screamed, "Behind you!" Jace turned, but too late. The gun spat fire. The bullet tore into his arm. He staggered, dropped to one knee, revolver slipping from his grasp. Something inside Nayeli snapped. She bolted forward, the chain whistling in her grip. With a feral cry, she hurled it across the gap. The iron links wrapped around the rifle barrel, jerking it aside. The shot went wild. She yanked hard, pulling the man off balance, and then sprinted up the rocks, tackling him with a fury that shocked even herself. Her fist struck his face, again and again, until the man lay still. Blood dripped from her knuckles. She panted, hair plastered to her face with sweat, chest heaving. When she turned back, Jace was watching her, pale from blood loss, a grin tugging at his lips despite the wound. "Damn," he rasped. "Remind me never to cross you." The bounty hunters broke under the ferocity of the fight. A few bodies lay in the dust, others crawled away bleeding, and the rest fled into the dark, spooked by the Apache girl's wild cry and the outlaw chief's relentless fire. Silence fell at last, broken only by the crackle of the dying campfire and the moans of the wounded. The desert smelled of blood and smoke. Nayeli stumbled back to Jace. He leaned against a rock. Blood soaking through his sleeve. She dropped the shotgun and pressed a hand to his wound. "Hold still," she whispered. "Didn't know you cared," he teased, though his voice was weak. She glared at him, though her eyes burned. "You saved me. Now shut up." He chuckled, then hissed when she tightened the cloth around his arm. They rode by dawn, wounded and weary. The desert stretched endless around them, painted gold and crimson by the rising sun. By midday, they reached an abandoned cabin tucked against a canyon wall, weathered with sagging, but still standing. The men secured the perimeter, posted guards, and tended their horses. Nayeli pulled Jace inside. The cabin smelled of dust and old timber. She sat him on a cot, fetched water, tore cloth into strips. As she cleaned his wound, he winced but never pulled away. His smoke-gray eyes followed her every move. "You ever patch a man up before?" he asked, voice rough. No, she said flatly. But I've seen enough blood to know what to do. He studied her a moment, then smirked. You're full of surprises, girl. Her hands froze, the cloth stained red. She lifted her gaze. My name is Nayeli. Not girl. For a heartbeat, the world went still. Then he nodded. Nayeli. Suits you. She finished binding his arm, sitting back with a weary sigh. Jace flexed his fingers, testing the wrap, and gave her a lopsided grin. Didn't think an outlaw bled this easy, did you? He said. A ghost of a smile tugged at her lips despite herself. You bleed like any man. Ah, but I ain't just any man. He winked, then groaned as the motion tugged at his wound. I'm Jace Holloway. Sheriff Kane probably already told you. Most wanted outlaw in 3 territories. Most foolish, too, she muttered. The men outside laughed at something, their voices carrying. Jace chuckled, shaking his head. See? You're already one of us. Got the mouth for it. But her expression darkened. I am not one of you. I fight for my people. My land. His grin faded. He leaned forward, tone softer. And where are they now? The silence that followed was heavy. Her throat tightened. She looked away, eyes burning. Gone, she whispered. All gone. The outlaw chief leaned back, face shadowed. For once, his grin vanished. Ain't so different from me then. She glanced at him, wary. Law took my family too, he said quietly. Father hanged for stealin' a horse. Mother worked herself to the bone, starved just to keep me alive. When I got older, the law took the only thing I had left, my land. Said it weren't mine. Burned me out. So I burned back. Nayeli searched his face. She had expected arrogance, cruelty, maybe lies. But not this. Not the echo of her own pain in his eyes. You carry chain same as me, she murmured. Difference is, he said, eyes steady, I learned to break mine. Now I'm teachin' you. Her breath caught. For the first time since her capture, hope flickered, a dangerous thing, fragile, but alive. By nightfall, the outlaws gathered around a small fire outside the cabin. The desert stars spread like spilled diamonds overhead. The men muttered about rumors, word was spreading fast. The Apache girl, one outlaw said. They say she's cursed. Others say Holloway stole her from the gallows, another muttered. Either way, bounties doubled. Every gun in the territory'll be on us. Nayeli listened from the shadows, her heart tight. She had brought them danger. Her presence was a beacon, calling hunters and lawmen. Later, alone by the fire, she spoke to Jace. You should have left me. I bring nothing but death. He chuckled softly, shaking his head. Death was already ridin' with us, darlin'. You just gave it a prettier face. She scowled. You mock. He tilted his head, eyes gleaming. Maybe. Or maybe I'm sayin' you're worth more than you believe. The canyon swallowed the sound of hooves. Dust swirled in the twilight, curling around jagged rocks like ghosts unwilling to leave. The outlaw chief rode at the front, shoulders heavy with something deeper than weight. Beside him, the Apache girl sat tall on her horse, wrists free of iron, spirit burning brighter than the dying sun. She was no longer a prisoner. She was fire unchained. But freedom always came with a price. Behind them, the posse of bounty hunters rode hard. Every clink of spur, every gun cocked into the night was a reminder, there would be no quiet ending. The outlaw reined in his stallion at the ridge. From up there, the land stretched wide, rolling desert, blood-red canyons, and the distant river glinting silver. He could almost pretend it was peace. Almost. They won't stop, the girl whispered, her voice carrying the low music of her people. They'll chase you until the wind itself gives up. The outlaw smiled, faint and weary. That's the problem with men who smell gold. They don't know when to quit. He dismounted, pulling a rifle from his saddle. His hands, scarred from years of sin, were steady now. You could keep riding. Find your people. Disappear. She slid off her horse, her bare feet stirring the dust. Her eyes locked on his. You cut my chains. You think I'd leave you to die in theirs? The silence after her words was heavy, almost sacred. He had lived a life where loyalty was as scarce as water. Yet here stood a girl who owed him nothing, choosing to stay. For the first time, the outlaw chief felt the ground shift under him, not from hooves, but from the weight of something like grace. The bounty hunters arrived with a thunder of gunfire. Bullets screamed against stone, sparking off rock walls. Horses shrieked, rearing back. Down, the outlaw barked, pulling the girl against the canyon wall. Dust rained from above as bullets chewed into the cliffside. Then he rose, rifle cracking like lightning. One man fell. Another cursed and pulled his wounded comrade behind cover. The canyon echoed with war cries, smoke, and the acrid stench of gunpowder. The girl was no helpless witness. With a wild cry, she grabbed a revolver from the outlaw's belt. Her aim was raw, but her spirit fierce. A shot rang out, grazing a bounty hunter's arm, forcing him to drop his rifle. Not bad for your first try, the outlaw said, breathless. She smirked through the smoke. I learn fast. The fight raged on, a storm of chaos. The outlaw took a bullet in the shoulder, spun but didn't fall. He gritted his teeth, firing back, refusing to bow. The girl pressed her hand to his wound, crimson soaking her palm. You can't fight them all. Maybe not, he growled, eyes blazing, but I can make damn sure they remember me. When the smoke cleared, only 3 bounty hunters were left standing. Their leader stepped forward, face scarred, eyes hungry. End of the road, outlaw. There's no place left to run. The outlaw staggered to his horse, blood dripping, but fire still in his veins. He glanced at the girl, then back at the men. A smile tugged his lips, sharp, defiant. Boys, he rasped, I've been running all my life. Time I ride into something else. Before they could blink, he spurred his stallion forward. Hooves thundered. Gunshots cracked. The outlaw's figure blurred against the canyon's edge, a shadow defying death itself. He turned in the saddle one last time, rifle blazing, covering the girl as she slipped away into the rocks. His voice, carried on the wind, reached her ears. Live free. The stallion leapt the canyon's lip. For a heartbeat, man and beast flew against the sky, framed by the setting sun. Then the dust swallowed them whole. The gunfire ceased. Silence fell. The bounty hunters cursed, spitting into the dust, but none dared peer into the abyss. They had chased a legend. Legends didn't die where men could see. The Apache girl stood alone at the canyon's edge, chains broken, heart pounding. She whispered a prayer in her native tongue, words for the spirit of a man who had chosen her freedom over his life. Then she turned away, walking into the desert night. Her steps were sure, her back unbent. Somewhere, her people waited. And when they saw her return, no longer shackled, they would know her story. Not as a prisoner. Not as a victim. But as the girl who had been set free by an outlaw's last ride, and so, in the wild canyons of the West, where law was written in bullets and blood, an outlaw chief proved that even the damned could find redemption in a single act of defiance. A girl once broken by chains now carried his memory like fire in her chest. The desert would remember their names, not as whispers of fear, but as echoes of freedom. What do you think? Did the outlaw find peace in that final leap, or did the canyon keep his spirit riding forever? If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice keeps these tales alive.